to pay $3,700 a month in rent for a two-bedroom apartment. Well, that is what's necessary here in Vancouver. Today, we got news from rent.ca that the cost of rent across Canada has doubled, has increased faster than at any time in Canadian history. Housing costs under Justin Trudeau have doubled. Rent has doubled. The average mortgage payment has doubled. The needed down payment for the average home has doubled. It now takes 25 years in Canada's biggest city to save up for a down payment. It used to be, before Trudeau, 25 years is what it took to pay off a mortgage. Now it's what it takes just to get a mortgage. 9 in 10 of our young people believe they will never afford a home. This is the first generation of youth in Canadian history that has given up on home ownership. Housing used to be cheap in Canada. It used to be, you got a job, you graduated, by your mid-20s you could afford a home. But after 8 years of Justin Trudeau, that dream, like everything else, is broken. And then there's grocery prices, which are up more than 21% in the last 3 years alone. After the Trudeau NDP carbon tax applied on the farmers who make the food and the truckers who ship the food, and therefore applies on all the food itself. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, 1 in 5 Canadians are now actually skipping meals because they can't afford the price of food. 1.5 million going to food banks. Food banks are now oversubscribed. Our homeless shelters are overflowing, and decent people are now living in the streets. I just came from Penticton, where one community support worker told me there are now 70-year-olds, middle-class people, living in their cars because they can no longer afford the rent. They've been rent-evicted. The landlords come in and make a small renovation, kick the tenants out, double the rent. They have nowhere to go. We saw a story just yesterday of a lady who's a nurse, living in her van. This is life in Canada after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. It's not only unaffordable to eat, heat, and house yourself in Trudeau's Canada, it is also a dangerous place. Crime is soaring right across the country. Just yesterday, we saw the horrible story of a mother stabbed by an offender who had previously violated 16 probation orders. The catch and release criminal justice system that Justin Trudeau legislated and the NDP supported allows the same repeat violent offenders to commit one offense after another and be released onto the streets without consequences. Here in Vancouver, the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times. 6,000 arrests for 40 offenders. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. No wonder crime is rocketing after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. The good news is that Canada was not like this before Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. We're going to turn the hurt that he and the NDP have caused into the hope that Canadians need. We know how to do it. We know the common sense solutions to all of these problems. We're going to bring home lower prices by axing the Liberal carbon tax and by ending the inflationary deficits that have driven inflation to record highs. By capping spending and balancing the budget, we can bring down inflation, which will allow the Bank of Canada to reduce interest rates on struggling mortgage holders. And as for the carbon tax, we know that British Columbia has its own tax, but Trudeau and the federal NDP are forcing British Columbians to raise that tax by 300% over the next 6.5 years. A Poilievre government will cancel those tax hikes and make it possible for prices to come down. We're going to bring home powerful paychecks by cutting income taxes so that hard work once again pays off. And we're going to make it possible for our brilliant immigrants to work in their chosen and trained professions. Right now, our immigrants come here and they're banned from working as doctors, nurses, engineers, because there's no way for them to prove their qualifications quickly or efficiently. A Poilievre government will bring the provinces together to push a blue seal professional standard so that our immigrants can take a test, prove they're qualified, and get to work serving as doctors and nurses. We have 19,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses prevented from working. If they could take a blue seal exam, they could get to work and relieve the congestion in our hospitals. We're going to bring homes people can afford. We know why housing prices are rising. We don't have enough homes. Vancouver is now the third most expensive housing market in the world, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, London, England, and even Singapore. Why? Well, we have the fewest houses per capita on planet Earth. Why is that? Well, according to the CMHC, in a report that just came out yesterday, Vancouver and Toronto are the slowest to deliver building permits. Slow permits mean higher prices, and higher prices mean Canadians can't afford to put roof overhead. A Poilievre-led government will incentivize our cities to speed up and lower the cost of building permits and free up land so builders can build, build, build. I'll require Vancouver, Toronto, and all other big cities boost home building permits by 15% per year, or they'll lose federal grants. Those that beat that 15% target will get a building bonus, and will require every federally funded transit station have high-density apartments built all around, and sometimes even on top of the stations, so our youth and our seniors don't even need to don't even need to have a car. They can live right next to the bus and train. We know how these construction projects can move ahead because the Squamish people have shown the way. Here in Vancouver, the Squamish have their own reserve land. They don't have to follow the bureaucracy at City Hall, and so the Squamish are building 6,000 units of housing on 10 acres of land. 6,000 deserving families will have a home. Why? Because the gatekeepers were out of the way, and the Squamish used common sense to get a project approved and shovels in the ground. That's what we're going to replicate. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land so that we can build, 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 and once again, the dream of home ownership, which was achievable only 8 years ago, will be realized once again. We're going to bring home safe streets. We're going to end catch and release. A Poilievre-led government will bring in jail, not bail. Jail, not bail for repeat violent offenders. We'll ban heroin, crack, and other hard drugs, and we'll put the money into recovery and treatment to help bring home our loved ones drug-free. This is common sense. It's the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home, let's bring it home. Thank you very much. Thank you. Questions?
Okay. We'll have time for a few questions from the floor.
Thank you. Benoît Ferradini from Radio-Canada.
Merci.
La grève dans le port de Vancouver, dans les ports de la province, s'est achevée hier. La communauté d'affaires demande une solution pour que ça n'arrive pas de nouveau.
Oui.
Qu'est-ce que vous feriez?
Mais premièrement, j'ai beaucoup de sympathie pour les travailleurs. Avec l'inflation exorbitante, les travailleurs avaient besoin d'avoir des augmentations de paie juste pour se nourrir. Regarde les prix que les gens payent juste pour se nourrir. Ici, à Vancouver, ça coûte 3 600 $ juste pour un appartement à 2 chambres. Donc, je comprends pourquoi les travailleurs avaient besoin de se battre pour un meilleur salaire. Je pense qu'il faut rendre la vie abordable. Et c'est ce que je ferais, en annulant la taxe carbone pour réduire le coût de l'essence, de chauffage et de nourriture, en équilibrant le budget pour réduire l'inflation et les taux d'intérêt, et en coupant les impôts pour permettre des chèques de paie plus grands. On va éviter ces genres de grève à l'avenir parce que les travailleurs vont pouvoir payer leurs factures. Donc, c'est ça l'approche que je prendrais. On voit la même chose au Québec en passant. le loyer a doublé au Québec. Donc, on sait que les travailleurs ont besoin de se nourrir. On peut s'attendre à ce qu'il y ait davantage de grèves à cause de cette inflation. Donc, il faut inciter des municipalités de bâtir davantage de logements pour les travailleurs, réduire les taxes et les impôts et éliminer les déficits inflationnistes pour que les travailleurs et travailleuses puissent payer leurs factures et être remboursés pour le bon travail qu'ils font. Thank you very much. Listen, I understand why the workers here in Vancouver were so desperate and needed to fight for their better wages and working conditions. The exorbitant inflation has made it impossible for these hardworking employees to feed themselves and house themselves. The way to avoid these strikes is to bring home powerful paychecks and lower costs, and that's why I'll eliminate the carbon tax to bring down the cost of living, balance the budget to lower interest rates and inflation, lower income tax so our workers bring home more of each dollar they earn, and I will incentivize our municipalities to speed up and lower the cost of building so that working class people can again enjoy the dream that they have earned of home ownership.
And I can ask the next question in French, in English, and you can answer in French and English.
Merci.
BC is faced with a wildfire season like never before. A firefighter lost her life yesterday in Revelstoke. How do you react to that? In French and English, please.
Mais premièrement, j'aimerais offrir mes condoléances à la famille. Il faut que le gouvernement travaille pour mieux coordonner ses réponses aux feux de forêt et aux autres urgences qu'on voit que ce soit des inondations ou des feux ou d'autres problèmes comme ça. Nous le Parti conservateur et notre caucus travaillent maintenant pour développer un plan de mieux coordonner nos réponses à ces genres d'urgence parce qu'il nous faut mieux cibler nos ressources pour contrer ces problèmes qu'on voit de plus en plus. Et nous allons, dans notre plateforme électorale, nous allons présenter un plan pour mieux coordonner et répondre aux feux de forêt et aux inondations. Thank you very much for your question. We offer our condolences to the families of the lost firefighter. We believe that the government in Ottawa, the federal government, needs to have a better coordinated approach to responding to forest fires, floods, and other natural disasters. We have resources scattered across the country that need to be coordinated and deployed more quickly so that places that have surplus resources can quickly make them available to places that are in desperate need to respond to a natural disaster. And part of our election platform will be to counter these natural disasters with better centrally coordinated responses in cooperation with local and provincial authorities. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre.
Yes.
Rob Brownridge, City TV and Omni TV. So I'm looking here at an article from the Journal of the European Economic Association published just on March 16th. This is a major international study. Found no significant impact of carbon taxes on inflation in Europe and a slight deflationary impact in Canada attributed to the stimulus to investment and supply in non-carbon intensive industries being provided by the carbon tax. So what's your response to that, and what hard data evidence do you have that the carbon tax is a major significant driver of inflation in Canada opposed to the economic rebound in demand following the COVID pandemic health restrictions?
So what data do I have showing that the carbon tax drives up the cost of living? Well, the Bank of Canada. So the Bank of Canada governor has already said that the carbon tax contributes to inflation. There are all kinds of socialist interest groups that want to justify higher taxes with phony studies, but we know very simply when you raise the cost of the gas and diesel that our farmers use to produce the food and that our truckers use to ship the food, you raise the price of the food itself. somebody has to pay that price. It is magical thinking to suggest that you can raise energy prices on businesses, farmers, and workers without raising inflation. And we see it right here in British Columbia, where the NDP and Liberals have imposed among the highest carbon taxes. Gas is almost $2 a litre, significantly higher than in other provinces where they fought back against the carbon tax. The worst is yet to come, though, under Trudeau and the NDP. They want to force British Columbians, through the power of the federal government, to raise the carbon tax a full 61 cents a litre. That'll mean people will go hungry. Food banks will be overflowing with people. We'll see more people living in tent cities because they won't be able to afford their home heating bills. That's not the Canada that we know and love. We need is affordable energy. And that is what I will deliver. Instead of raising the price of traditional energy that we still need, let's lower the cost of carbon-free alternatives. Let's incentivize nuclear, hydro, carbon capture and storage, and other sources of energy that Canadians can use to power the grid without emissions. Let's green light green projects like a carbon pipeline to pipe the carbon back into the ground, speed up approval for Quebec hydroelectricity dams, and make it faster and safer to approve small modular nuclear reactors so we can put clean, emissions-free nuclear energy onto our grid. That's the way we bring down emissions and bring down the cost of living at the same time. So let's bring home lower prices.
Okay, and this will be the final question.
If I can. Well, I'd like to ask, are you hereby then labeling the European Economic Association a phony, as you called it, phony socialist body? Would you like to say that the European Economic Association and tell them that they are phony and socialist?
I think anybody who suggests that you can raise energy prices without raising inflation is phony. I think there's a lot of these groups, interest groups that don't worry about the costs to working class people. They jet around and attend their seminars in fancy hotels around the world, and they expect single moms to go hungry. They have no problem forcing jobs out of Canada to more polluting foreign jurisdictions. So I do think that is a phony socialist approach. My approach is to bring home lower prices by axing the tax, bringing down energy costs so that Canadians can afford to eat, heat, and house themselves.
Okay, this will be the final question.
About the foreign interference, why hasn't been an agreement between the parties in the negotiations to set up a public inquiry? And I would appreciate fresh in English as well.
We're waiting. We've offered the Prime Minister all the information he's asked for. We've suggested a mandate, a time frame. We have names ready to share with him as soon as he confirms that he's going to go ahead with it. But the ball has been in Mr. Trudeau's court now for, well, about 10 months. And Canadians are waiting. You know, it was, November of 2022 when the story broke that Beijing had interfered in multiple federal elections to help Mr. Trudeau win, that they continue to open police stations in Canada. Since that time, we've been calling for a public inquiry. And we've told the Prime Minister we're prepared to cooperate with him any way we can to facilitate that inquiry. And we've given him all the information he's asked for. We're sitting next to our phone, waiting for him to call with any news on when that inquiry will happen. We continue to call upon Justin Trudeau to stop the delays, call a public inquiry. Let's bring home control of our democracy. En français. Merci beaucoup. Nous attendons M. Trudeau. Ça fait 10 mois depuis que le public est au courant de la grande ingérence de Pékin dans nos élections pour aider le Parti libéral à gagner. Puis, nous avons demandé une enquête publique depuis ce temps-là. Il y a quelques mois, le premier s'est dit vouloir travailler avec les partis de l'opposition afin de déclencher une telle enquête, peut-être. Et on travaille avec lui. On a eu des pourparlers depuis 5 semaines à peu près. Et on a répondu à toutes les questions qu'il avait. On a déjà un mandat proposé, des noms des Canadiens non partisans et professionnels, des juges ou d'autres personnels de l'intelligence, de renseignement. Et nous sommes là pour travailler avec le Premier ministre, mais c'est lui qui doit décider. C'est seulement le Premier ministre du Canada qui a le pouvoir de déclencher une enquête publique et nous revendiquons qu'il le fasse dès maintenant.